So happy to be with Megan today in Accra. As I say, like I'm really impressed by entrepreneur who launch accounting software. Maybe my first question is, you are from the US.
Yes.
When did you move to Africa for the first time, and did you move to Accra first?
I moved to the Republic of Guinea in 2011. As a 22-year-old, had never been to Africa. I lived in a hut. I had no electricity. I had no running water. Our road wasn't paved. Like full rural experience. I did that for over 2 years. And then I was going back and forth between Boston and West Africa. And then I launched Oze in 2018. And as soon as I was in grad school at the time. And as soon as I graduated, I moved to Ghana in 2019.
What was your main motivation to come to Africa? Do you have like family link? Do you have just image, or is it like I need the full experience, be outside of the US?
It's such a lame answer that I'm about to give you. I interned with this consulting company called the Monitor Group, and they had a huge emerging markets practice around regional economic competitiveness. So how do you make North Africa known for this, or West Africa known for this, or these three countries to work together? I was like, that's really interesting. That's the work that I want to do. I interned with them. I got a job offer, and I asked them, can I defer and join the Peace Corps to go get like real emerging markets experience? And they said, yeah, go right ahead.
Why did you stay in Africa? Because you had the choice now, and you decided to stay and launch a business here.
Yeah, a couple of things, I think. One, I've always been entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurship is a spectrum. We say, like when I used to teach entrepreneurship, from NGO all the way to the other side of like a business that doesn't care about its externalities. We say like a river polluting factory that doesn't pay minimum wage, right? And I've always tended in the profit side, but like a little bit towards social impact. I started many things. I started a theater company when I was in university. I started a nonprofit when I was literally a child. So I've always been like social entrepreneurial. And I love problem solving. And you get to a place like Guinea, and if you're someone who's like really gets like intellectually engaged with solving problems, like Guinea is a playground for you. Every single thing can be made better, can be made more efficient, or a better user experience, or made to like actually work. And so that's like really what got me hooked, was solving problems. And the problem that like really, really fascinated me is, why can my parents start small businesses in the US where they make money and they can send me to the best schools and they can, buy a house? And in other markets, you start a small business and you're gonna fail, your profit margins are gonna be small, and statistically, you're unlikely to ever hire anybody else. I was like, okay, I wanna solve this problem of youth unemployment, and I think the solution is around getting SMEs to be able to actually hire other people. And so even when I went back to the US, was doing consulting work, like was in grad school, like I was using all my vacation time to come back to West Africa and learn more about the problem and learn how to solve it. So I say like I've lived on and off in Africa for the last 11 years, but like emotionally and mentally, I've always been here.
But you think it's also like a big US mindset, and you live in French-speaking country, you live now in African country as well. You see this big difference where like you are less scared of taking risk in the US compared to all around the world, I would say.
Well, the US is interesting, right? Because we do have this entrepreneurial mindset. Both my parents are small business owners. Both my brothers work in startups. Like none of us have like stable employment. And it's normalized a bit, but in terms of like the rate of entrepreneurship and the rate of female entrepreneurship, Ghana actually beats the US. And we don't see it as risk-taking, because in the US, maybe, especially like if you come from a certain background, you're choosing entrepreneurship over employment. But in the markets where I've worked, you don't have the choice of employment. So you're taking even a bigger risk because you're doing it in markets without a safety net. But we don't treat it as risk-taking because there's no choice. So yeah, I mean, it's all a spectrum, and I think class and educational background and opportunity and kind of where you are in a market cycle, they all influence like how we perceive the choices people make.
You say something very interesting. There is more female entrepreneur in Ghana than the US. Can you explain us a little bit?
Yeah, so Ghana actually has one of the world's highest rates of female entrepreneurship. Again, entrepreneurship is a huge word. Like,
being your own boss.
Yeah, it's like everyone in Africa, no, most people in Africa, because even if you're employed, like you have a side hustle. Like everyone's entrepreneurs. Then you look at kind of the rate in a place like Ghana, and what it typically means is that there's females are less employed. Or we have tons of female-owned business owners on Oze who used to work in the bank branch, like used to have some employment, and after kid number 3, they could not balance sitting in traffic for several hours, working right with all the demands, and so they turned to entrepreneurship to be able to have more flexibility in their schedule. The downside of that is, like everywhere else in the world, women have less access to capital, whether that's debt or equity. And so while there are more, like there's a higher rate of female entrepreneurship here, they're much more likely to be a micro business, right? A man starting a business is more likely to get that bank loan, to have an office, to hire employees. So we have a lot of women like really going for it, but not the structural support in place to make them wildly successful.
If you have to pitch like Oze in 30 seconds, what will be the pitch after like 4 years iterating on the product and you helping thousands of businesses?
Yeah, so we're really building the operating system for small business owners for markets where you have multi-channel sales, so you're selling on social commerce, on e-commerce, in markets, in retail, and also multi-channel payments. So cash, mobile money, card payment, bank transfer. Managing all that complexity is chaos. Then you layer on top of that the fact that your customers don't have credit cards, so you might also be selling on credit, so like you yourself are now acting like a bank. So we're trying to create a single source of truth out of that complexity. And once you have that single source of truth, it enables and empowers so much for you as a business owner and for your business. So it enables you to make good data-driven decisions, but it also enables you to do things like get capital to fuel your growth. And so that's really what we're working on.
To better understand like the impact on micro businesses on a region like West Africa or a country like Ghana, how big is it like in terms of GDP, in terms of number of businesses? Is it like the heart of the African economy today?
Yeah, so we say like when we're building for African SMEs, we're really building the African economy. And we're building tools to reshape it so that the small business owner who makes up the majority of jobs, the majority of GDP, the majority of firms, is the winner in this economy. Not the mining companies that have come in from outside, not the fuel companies that, maybe aren't so future looking. But how can we reshape the economy so that SMEs win?
Why building accounting software will help them on a day-to-day? It makes obvious when you understand the importance of the accounting, but it can be like a simple question. Do they need an accounting software to help them?
So we wouldn't call ourselves accounting as much as record keeping. And you need data to make decisions. Most entrepreneurs, most people in Africa are youth. Most entrepreneurs are youth. Like the people who have jobs tend to be much older, like average age, right? It's not like in the US where you're 22, you go get your first job. And so we say like, okay, there's this whole generation of 40, 50, 60-year-old business owners who are making decisions based on their gut, but they've trained their gut. Their gut can now read the market trends, can read the demand. You put an untrained gut out there, you're gonna fail, especially in such a complicated market. And so we don't position it as you need an accounting system, but you need record keeping. You need to know what you're earning, what you're selling, what products are moving, so that you can make decisions and then know, was that decision the right decision or not? Do I need to go back and try something different? Like, is my business moving on these trends? And I think first running an accelerator, it made it so apparent, right? Because I was running a small business accelerator, not a tech accelerator. And so it became very apparent, like, we need real-time understanding of business performance, and record keeping is the foundation. And in a more developed market, you don't actually have to do record keeping because everything is online, right? You just need to plug some things together and voila. Here, 90% of transactions are cash. 3/4 of adults in Africa have never made a purchase online. So it's all analog. And so now how do you incentivize people and nudge people to do that hard work of collecting their data so that they can make these good decisions? And that's really kind of chapter 1 of Oze. And now as the market is shifting and more things are happening online, it's like, okay, you've built that muscle, keep that muscle going. No one's giving up cash. But how can we make your life easier by now plugging in these automated forms of data and create this kind of layer that allows you always to have a real-time and full picture of business performance?
And all these million of businesses have also, I will say, an unfair advantage compared to the other because they cannot go to a
Exactly.
bank and ask for help because a bank will don't have the information that they need. This is also the other aspect of the problem of the small businesses.
Yeah.
They cannot get help from the bank, right?
Exactly. So we went to a bank, a very well-known bank here, and we said, okay, with my background in human-centered design, everything we do is co-created. So he said, let's map out your credit process. How do you give SME loans? Because from your website, from your branch, from your materials, you give SME loans. Cash collateral, which this to me is mind-blowing. A bank or an MF, a microfinance bank, might ask you for 120% cash collateral. So if I want to borrow $100, I have to actually give them $120.
Why I will get $100?
And then in markets like Kenya or Nigeria, they might turn to like digital lenders, where now maybe you're looking 60%, but maybe you're even looking 100% plus APR. And so it's very hard to go to a bank that is having customers coming in and paying those interest rates, a fintech that's having those customers coming in and paying those interest rates and say, we reduce your risk, so lower your interest rates. So instead, what we try to do is, how can we make the SME strong enough that a commercial bank, which would be a 24 to 36% APR, can lend to you? So we raise up the SME, and then we very quickly realize we still have this gap. So how do we use data and technology to kind of like lower down the bank so that they can meet in the middle and we can move capital from the banks that have a mandate to lend to SMEs to actually be able to lend to those SMEs profitably?
To really summarize and let me know if I'm wrong, so
Yeah.
you build two products.
Exactly.
The first one is to micro businesses, the heart of the economy of Africa. And the second one is for financial institutions, banks. And you are like human marketplace or data marketplace where you can connect both worlds. Is it a good summary of the different business model?
We're not necessarily, like the one thing, we're not a marketplace in that banks don't list loans and then SMEs. We do the matching. So we take kind of the decisioning out of it. And so if we're working with a large bank, if the customer banks with them, that bank gets the first right to that loan. If a customer doesn't bank with any of our banking partners, then they get the loan that's best for them. So the best terms, the amount that they need, etc. So we're just actually doing that matching.
And if we come back on the record tracking, right? That's the term to use. Is it a software? Is it a mobile application? Is it a WhatsApp number?
Yeah.
How it look like the product today for micro businesses?
So right now it's a mobile app. We also have a web app, but the mobile app is way more popular, especially because it works offline. So people don't have their data on all day on their phone. Like they'll turn off data during the day, keep their records, and then boop, at the end of the day, they turn it on, they upload everything, they read all their WhatsApp messages, etc. So it's a mobile app. The tools for banks are web apps. And so customers interact. Basically, there's right now 2 ways that data gets into the app. Either you're manually entering it or you're accepting payment through the app. And so that's recording the transaction. Before the end of the year, there'll be 2 other ways. And so one of those ways is linking your accounts. So you can link your email account, your bank account, your mobile money wallet, and that'd be one way. And the other way is actually to sell online through an Oze shop.
Super nice. And is it the first business application they are using? So you have a huge work of education, UX, and all of that. How do you work on that to change the pencil by a sort of Android application?
Yeah, we are. I mean, things have changed. When we started, we were really people's first business tool on their phone. Now they might be using Instagram already to sell. They might be using WhatsApp already, WhatsApp Business. So when we first started, we had to say like, oh, that phone that you are using to call your mom and watch YouTube videos, that actually is a computer in your pocket and like a powerful business tool. And now people are just kind of get that. We do so much testing. So the idea for new features or new changes is coming from like really embedding ourselves with the customer, spending time in the market, understanding what are they doing today, what are their workarounds, and what needs to be built. And then at every stage of the design process, we are going back to customers for moderated testing, so we can get their thoughts, but also unmoderated testing, so they're not biased by us being around, and iterating and iterating and iterating. And I think, we're not only supposed to talk about the brilliant things that we've done, I think a lot of it is you have to go out and you have to learn. So like the first stupid thing I did at Oze, coming from a Western context, coming from working in co-working spaces and going to the nicer coffee shops is, okay, people probably don't have Wi-Fi in their house, but they interact with Wi-Fi. And data is expensive, and people are sensitive to the cost of data. So let's have your data back up on Wi-Fi, and you can change it, right? The default is back up on Wi-Fi, and you can change it to also back up on cellular. At this point, we had 30 customers. They were doing like a pilot with us. And they were texting me, it's great, I love Oze. Like, it's changing everything, it's a wonderful app. And then I go into our database and go, you actually haven't used it. So like, are you just telling me what I want to hear? Are you really liking it? And so what we realized very quickly was no one was ever on Wi-Fi. And we had customers who kind of were like logging out without backing up and losing all their data. And that's when you know you're solving a problem, when you've lost someone's business data. We don't do this anymore, obviously. But when you've lost someone's business data and you apologize and they still come back, right? We have customers from that original pilot who are still using Oze today. The other thing that I think really hammered home, like how much you need to test, how simple you need to make things, is when we first built Oze, kind of the trend in UI was the hamburger menu. Right, so you have like the 3 bars on the top, and then the drawer opens out sideways. And so I was out with a customer, and we send daily business tips, and I was interviewing her, and the business tip came through, and she's like, oh, wait. She went and got a notebook, and she read the business tip, and she wrote it in her notebook. And I was like, okay, explain what you just did to me, because why are you taking something digital and putting it in a notebook? And she's like, because I want to be able to see it again. She had been using the app every day for months and never realized that was a menu. So didn't realize that we were saving all of the business tips. Didn't realize that there was a dashboard even. All she was doing was recording sales and expenses, looking at the list and sending receipts. And so that you sit there and your mind is blown because you might click that out, right? It doesn't even occur to you to look for a menu. You just click something expecting it to be the menu. And because so many people, they were exposed to Facebook and WhatsApp and not much else, and only kind of gently exposed to them, they don't have that same, I've had a smartphone at this point now for 12, 13 years. I don't even really think about it.
How did you onboard the first 500 users of Oze? Doing door-to-door by word of mouth? What was the strategy to onboard the first 500?
Early days, because everyone has an SME, it was like our colleagues sharing it with their friends, them sharing it with the other businesses in their network. Oze receipts are one of the most popular features. So you can send receipts and invoices with your logo and your address, and you look very professional. And they're all powered by Oze. So that too was driving people, okay, what is Oze? I want to also send this receipt. So we didn't invest in marketing at all for our first 2 years.
Crazy.
We just kind of grew organically through networks, through partnerships.
And today, what is the type of businesses using Oze? I'm sure a lot of diverse.
Yeah.
Is it farmers? Is it sellers, as you mentioned, because of collection? What's the different use cases in terms of strong percentage of users?
It's so diverse. I say we have someone who is selling corn on Oze, selling pure agricultural commodities. Someone selling cryptocurrency. So, and our number one thing that unites our customers is they have aspirations. You can run a business and live on your small margins and not grow with a notebook, right? These are the 40, 56-year-olds who've been doing it for decades at this point. You only adopt Oze if you want something to change, if you want your business to take to the next level. So that's a huge thing for us, is who is growth-oriented. Those people tend to be in urban environments, tend to be young.
No, that's super interesting because you didn't do like the traditional, like
Oh, we
marketing
tried.
or sales and say,
Yeah.
let's start with the farmers. Just say, okay, what's the common pattern with all my users?
Yeah.
They all have this behavior. They
Yeah.
all want to grow. They want to hire the first employees. They want to get the first loans.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting to summarize more on an intent basis rather than a
Yeah.
firmographic criteria.
And now we are getting like a little bit more specific. So it's like within that segment, who are we building for? And so we have now like we really optimize for the multi-channel seller. So the majority of the customers we're targeting now have some sort of social commerce selling presence. And then our other kind of more specific segment is our mompreneurs. So we find this segment is not as large as other segments, but moms who are entrepreneurs, they're juggling so much, being able to do things on the go, manage their business, not have to remember things while also raising 3 kids and managing a household. They use Oze to its fullest extent, and they are really good at repaying their loans.
So my big question is, why a small businesses need a loans? We know like big company infrastructure investment, but why small businesses need loans and what type of loans they are doing on that?
So there's unlimited reasons why a business might need a loan. So I think one of the insights you have working in the emerging economy. So there is obviously an issue with people not having enough money when you're living towards the bottom of the pyramid. But actually what they find is income fluctuation is the more kind of detrimental, right? And you get the same thing with small businesses.
Yeah.
So they might have a big customer this month and no customer next month, and they have a lot of volatility. And Oze really helps smooth that volatility for them, but they might have gaps in their cash flow. So just kind of filling gaps in cash flow, doing income smoothing is a big part of lending, buying inventory. And our loans are not short term, so we'll do loans up to 6 months, and for repeat customers, even up to 12 months. What that means is I'm not taking $200 to go to the wholesaler in the market and buy $200 of products and sell them today and repay tomorrow and realize, oh my whole profit margin was eaten by that high interest loan. Instead, we give a longer, more patient loan. So maybe you can buy direct from the manufacturer. Maybe you can ship things in from abroad. And so we try to lend in a way that structurally changes the business. Financing one purchase order actually changes the business trajectory from this to this.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do that on a short-term, high-interest digital loan.
Did the user pay for the software today, or is more like the financial stack who pay for monetization of the user?
It's a freemium model.
Okay.
So we have, to put it in the words of our customers, most of them are enjoying the free model. But about 10% of people really using, like fully using the platform are paying a subscription. Our low-end subscription is cheap. It's $2 a month.
Yeah.
And we did that because we were the first subscription app built in Ghana.
Yeah.
And so we had to get people used to this idea that apps are something you pay for, that software is something that you pay
Compared to WhatsApp, who is free.
WhatsApp is free, and like you pirate everything else, right? So if it's paid, you pirate it, and if it's free, it's free. And we used to, in the early days, like we auto debit, right? So we have an auto debit on your mobile wallet, and people say, Oze's thieves, you took my 10 CDs, blah, blah, blah. We don't get that anymore. So now that the market is kind of shifting and becoming more used to this idea of a subscription, right? People are now paying for Netflix. They're understanding. They're maybe running Facebook ads. So that's really changing, and we're reevaluating how we do pricing because of that.
And why Ghana is a great market to launch a tech product?
I mean, we're in Ghana and Nigeria now, and I'm constantly asking myself, like, should I have done Ghana first? Should I have done Nigeria first? And where I sit from today, I think Ghana was the right choice. I think the most traditional business thing I ever did was create this matrix of like market criteria across the top of countries down the side and filled in the whole table. I'm sure I can even find it.
Another spreadsheet.
Yeah, exactly. And it came down to Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, and Nigeria. This was right before Nigeria kind of took the top spot for fintech innovation. I think if we had started 1 year later, we might have started in Nigeria. But the kind of across the top things that make Ghana even on that list was high smartphone penetration. So at the time, it was 1% behind South Africa. At the time, there was an unlimited data package from MTN, which they since scrapped. Uber had just come here. The regulation is good. It's a very business-friendly environment. You can repatriate funds. So there's like, and Ghana, when you tell a foreigner Ghana, that, oh yeah, like, you know, they have like a positive association
Nice
with
beach,
Ghana.
cool city.
And like stability and governance and democracy that you don't necessarily get when you mention some of the other countries in the region.
And today, you live in Ghana for a few times. How is the life in Accra as an expatriate American entrepreneur?
There's a small community of entrepreneurs here, and it's a mix. So a lot of diasporans, a lot like a good handful of Ghanaians. It's very different than like a Nairobi, for example, where there's a massive expat community in the private sector. Here, I would say most of the expat community is in the public sector, and the embassies, like many large international organizations, have their regional headquarters here. But I think it's really, you get frustrations you wouldn't get elsewhere, but day-to-day life is pretty normal, right? Like I go to restaurants and bars with my friends. I go to the beach. Like you're just kind of living your life, and things that maybe if a visitor came in for the first time, they would find surprising, you don't even notice anymore. Like Accra is my city, Accra is my home for now. I kind of forget it's weird that in a major metropolitan city, there's like goats and chickens running in the road. You just don't notice these things anymore after a certain amount of time, and life feels pretty normal.
You say the sentence that I found very interesting. You say, to launch, it's easy. The sustainability is the hardest part. Can you tell me a little bit more?
I always, like, again, when you look back and you're like, okay, what would I have done differently? Raise a lot more money in the beginning, because at that early stage, and then we couldn't do it. In 2018, like, no one was investing here. But at that early stage, you're selling a vision. You're selling hopes and dreams and the best case scenario, which is super exciting. And then you find out your customers don't know what a hamburger menu is. And so the growth rate's not gonna look quite like this. And so, yeah, of course, like anyone can start a business. Not everyone can sustain a business. Running with my co-founding team and like our first 3 employees, it was all about building and customers, right? Then you get to a certain size and all of a sudden like you're spending a good amount of your time doing internal work rather than just external facing work. And that's a whole different skill set. Being in a regulated industry and being able to meet the needs of the Bank of Ghana, the Central Bank of Nigeria, that now becomes a whole different business with a whole different skill set. And like, how do you grow and adapt and change and bring in the people that you need? And founders tend to not have humility, right? You're like, oh yes, I am the one who is going to change the economy. Let's start with Africa and then do the world, right? And then you have to quickly turn and say, okay, and I have these gaps and I need to find the right people to bring in and fill those gaps. And so it is like every day your job changes and you're doing something different. So yeah, like that, like I think we're definitely over that trough now, right? Like customers discover us and pay for us and are growing with us. But there's that period where all you're doing every day is disproving your hypotheses, and that's a really hard place to run a business from and get enough capital to get across. So I'm really, really happy that we cut our teeth in the 2018s when there was $1 billion of venture capital invested on this entire continent, compared to like a lot of the excitement that came end of 2020, 2021, where people started businesses because capital was so easy, who are now for the first time building something in a capital constrained environment. And I think like if you're in US or Southeast Asia, like most companies have either failed or scaled in a period of resource availability, but there's a small group of us who started in Africa early enough that we know what it's like to not run with resources, and we're building real businesses, and I think we will change the economy.
We will see, but you sleep better now.
Yeah.
These decisions start to work, and you can see the success. Did bank is revenue for you as well today? Did the bank pay as well as an income, or you're working on it?
Right, for the first couple of banks that signed on, it was a pure revenue share. For banks going forward, there's also a licensing fee.
That's super exciting.
And an integration incentive. So we find that we are not the cause of delays in bank integrations. So they give us some money, and then if they complete the integration within the timeline, they get credited that money back. If they don't, we get the money.
That's a super nice trick.
So.
So it's my last question. If you were not on that side of Osée, if you were a small businesses, what type of small businesses you will run?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say there's like the emotional part, which, right, small business owners act like consumers. They don't act like rational spreadsheets. So I'm gonna give you a business that's not very profitable, but I'd probably start like a cafe, coffee shop.
Okay.
Huge gap in the market here for decent coffee, and I grew up I worked in diners. I was a barista through college, so I feel like it's the other place where I maybe have some transferable skills. So yeah, I'd probably run a cafe.
No, thank you, Megan. It was a real pleasure, this interview. I think you explained very well, and I want to say again that I really believe like you are in the right business that you always wanted, but you didn't know, and you finish in the perfect situation, in the perfect ecosystem, and with the right product. So I hope this reflection will say, maybe tonight you will say, yes, that's true.
Yes, the banks are my friend. Yes, thank you so much. They're great questions.